Have you ever felt that kind of betrayal? Not the small mistakes or one-off slip-ups, but the kind that really knocks you off your feet. The kind that makes you question everything. Your choices, your words, your entire reality. It's the type of thing that sticks with you long after you think you've moved on. I'm not telling you this to get sympathy or to make anyone feel sorry for me. I'm sharing it because maybe, like me, some of you need to know that you're not losing it and that you're definitely not the only one. My wife cheated on me, and she did it with this smug, self-satisfied grin on her face, as if she thought I was too clueless to figure it out. But trust me, I figured it out. And when I did, I made sure she regretted every second of it. In the end, I walked away with the upper hand, and now she's left picking up the pieces of a life she ruined. Let me tell you about her. Scratch that. She is beautiful. That hasn't changed. She's the type of woman who immediately grabs everyone's attention the moment she walks into a room. She worked as a personal trainer at this high-end gym downtown, the kind of place where people spend more in a month than I make in a year. Every day, she'd walk in wearing those skin-tight yoga pants, her body a work of art sculpted from hours of intense workouts. Flat stomach, toned legs. She loved showing it all off. And her hair? It flowed down her back like something straight out of a shampoo commercial. I can't even tell you how many times I saw guys stop mid-conversation when she passed by. And you know what? She knew exactly what she was doing. I lost count of how often I'd catch her sneaking glances at her reflection, adjusting herself, soaking up all the attention. When we first met, I was in awe of her looks. I couldn't believe a woman like her would even look my way. But what I didn't realize, what I failed to see, was that beneath that gorgeous exterior was a woman who was all about herself. A woman who could be downright cold and cruel when no one else was around. But I didn't see that side of her until years into our marriage, when it was too late to change anything. See, I run a small business. Nothing flashy, not the kind of thing that'll get me on a magazine cover, but it's mine. I built it from the ground up, and it's kept us comfortable. We had a nice house, 2 cars. Everything you'd expect from a couple in their 30s who've worked hard and made a decent life for themselves. But somewhere along the way, things between us started falling apart. Maybe it was stress, maybe we just grew apart. Honestly, I don't know. All I know is that our relationship began to rot. And it wasn't some subtle shift. The intimacy, what used to be passionate and exciting, eventually turned into something mechanical, just going through the motions, ticking boxes like it was another task on a to-do list. Eventually, it got so bad that the mere mention of it made her roll her eyes like I was asking for the impossible. It felt like I was begging for scraps, and trust me, no man wants to feel that way in his own marriage. It's humiliating. And when we weren't ignoring each other, we were fighting over the dumbest things. Little stuff, stupid stuff. She'd leave the kitchen a mess, and I'd get pissed. I'd forget to grab milk on my way home, and she'd act like I'd committed some unforgivable sin. It was constant. No peace. No warmth. That spark we once had? Gone. Replaced by this growing wall of resentment. Then there was her phone. She couldn't seem to put it down. Always scrolling, typing, laughing at things I wasn't a part of. When I'd ask what was so funny, she'd toss out some vague response like, "Oh, just something from work." But when you know something's off, you just know. The secrecy. The late-night gym sessions when she was supposedly done for the day. The endless texting. Watching it all unfold felt like I was watching the slow death of my marriage. We had a group of friends. The usual crowd, grab drinks, barbecue, hang out. But there was one woman in our circle who stood out. Let's call her Maya. Maya had this effortless glow about her. Funny, sharp, caring, a genuinely good person. The kind of woman who actually listens when you speak instead of just waiting for her turn to talk. I've known Maya for years, long before my wife ever came into the picture. We were always just friends, or at least that's what I thought. But if I'm being honest, there's always been something more between us, even if we never acknowledged it. I've caught her looking at me in a way that made me feel something, and sometimes she'd stand just a little too close. You know what I'm talking about. Those subtle moments that only the people involved notice. But here's the thing, I never acted on it. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was trying to be the good guy. I had a wife, a marriage. Or at least I thought I did. So I buried all those feelings, even though I felt that pull toward Maya. I never crossed that line, not then. But trust me, Maya would become a much bigger part of this whole mess than either of us ever saw coming. Things between my wife and me were falling apart, but I had no idea just how bad it had gotten until one day, I discovered the affair. And that's a whole story in itself. There's this guy she works with, let's call him Alex.
Classic gym rat.
He's all muscles and no brains. The kind of guy who spends more time flexing in front of a mirror than actually working. Alex is the type who tosses around terms like bro and gains like he's the next fitness guru, thinking he's some kind of hotshot because he can lift more than most. From the first time I met him, I didn't like the guy. It wasn't just his arrogance. It was how he acted around my wife. Too comfortable. Too familiar. I could tell something wasn't right. He'd joke around with her, throw his arm around her like it was nothing. And there I was, standing there, gritting my teeth. She'd always brush it off, saying something like, "Oh, he's just like that with everyone." But I wasn't buying it. There was something off about him, something that didn't sit well with me. My gut told me to keep an eye on him, but I didn't want to seem like the paranoid husband. Maybe that's where I went wrong. I trusted her too much. Anyway, one day started out just like any other. I woke up, went through the motions, kissed my wife goodbye as she headed off to work, and then got on with my day. Business was busy, same old grind. Around lunchtime, I came home to grab something I'd forgotten. She wasn't home yet, but her phone was sitting on the kitchen counter. Normally, I'd never think about snooping through her phone. That's just not who I am. But that thing was buzzing constantly, and something inside me told me I had to look. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when I already knew, deep down, something wasn't. So I picked it up, unlocked it. Yeah, I knew the code, and there it was, a message from him. Alex. And this wasn't some innocent work chat. No, this was the kind of message that hits you like a sucker punch before you even finish reading. He was asking her when she'd be at their spot. Their spot. I couldn't stop myself. I opened the conversation, even though my brain was already in overdrive. What I saw felt like someone just slapped me. It was all their messages I couldn't unsee. They were planning their next meeting, talking about everything they'd done behind my back. Every word felt like a physical blow, and I could feel the depth of their betrayal in every sentence. The lies, the secrets. It was all there, laid out for me to see. And the worst part? Seeing what Alex had called me, a fool. He made fun of me, as if I was too dumb to notice, as if trusting my wife somehow made me weak. He thought he was untouchable, and I could practically feel his smugness in every word. And you know what? The first thing I wanted to do was flip out. I wanted to throw her phone through the wall, march down to that gym, and punch that guy in the face. Hell, part of me wanted to kick her out of the house right then and there. But I didn't. Somehow I kept it together. I stood there, gripping the counter, taking slow breaths, trying to steady myself. I knew if I acted on raw anger, I'd be giving them exactly what they wanted: drama, chaos, the big emotional breakdown. No, I needed to play this smart. So I put the phone down, took one last deep breath, and made a choice. If she was going to betray me like this, I wasn't going to sit back and take it. I was going to make sure she'd regret ever doing this. The first thing I did was text Maya. You remember her, right? The friend I've known forever? The one I've always felt something more for but never acted on? Yeah, her. I sent her a simple message, nothing too obvious. Just, hey, it's been a while. How've you been? I knew exactly what I was doing. Maya was going to be involved in this, whether she knew it or not. She responded fast, and before long, we were trading light-hearted messages, talking about old times, catching up on life. On the surface, it seemed like a harmless chat, but in the back of my mind, I was already putting the plan into motion. This wasn't just a friendly catch-up. I had an agenda, and everything was going to fall into place one way or another. Because here's the thing, I wasn't going to confront my wife and that jerk Alex and give them the satisfaction of a big confrontation. That would be too easy. No, I was going to make them pay in a way they never expected. And Maya? She was going to be a much bigger part of this than either of us could see coming. I thought seeing the messages between them was bad. But as I dug deeper, I realized how far this betrayal really went. It wasn't just the texts or the sneaky after-hours meetings. No, they were carrying on at the gym, the place where she was supposed to be helping people, getting them fit and healthy. The same gym where she'd built her career, her reputation. That's where she was sneaking around with Alex. The more I thought about it, the more disgusted I felt. The place where she spent most of her time, the place she always told me was where her focus was the very same place she was having her affair. You'd think they'd have the sense to keep it out of the workplace, but no. They couldn't wait to get busy like teenagers sneaking around. And then everything started to click. She was always staying late at the gym, coming up with some excuse about extra clients or having to close up. Yeah, right. She wasn't staying late for work. She was staying late to get a different kind of workout. One that didn't involve any dumbbells. I wasn't about to let this go. I needed proof. Something solid, something undeniable. That's when I remembered the gym had security cameras. Of course, they did. Places like hers are rigged with cameras. But here's the thing, no one watches those cameras unless something big happens. The staff knows it. And apparently those two thought they could get away with it. Well, they were wrong. So I waited until the gym closed that night. I knew there was a security guard on duty after hours. An old guy who probably didn't care about anything except collecting his paycheck. When I showed up, it wasn't hard to spot him. He was sitting at the front desk, half asleep, scrolling through his phone. I could tell he wasn't exactly looking to save the day. He was just there to clock in and out. I walked up to him, calm and collected. "Hey, I need a favor," I said, pulling out a couple $100 bills. His eyes lit up the second he saw the cash. "I need to see some footage from the last couple weeks." At first, he hesitated. I could see him weighing the risks in his head. Maybe he was worried this could blow back on him. But like I said, money talks. A couple $100 was probably more than he made in a week, and he didn't need to know the real reason behind the request. After a moment of thought, he nodded slowly. "Just don't say anything to anyone," he said, handing me the flash drive. No questions asked. No paperwork, just the footage. I took it, thanked him, and headed home, feeling like I was holding a bomb in my hand. Once I got home, I plugged the drive into my laptop. The file was huge. Hours of footage from every corner of the gym. There was no way I could sit through it all in one go, especially not by myself. After a couple of hours, I'd barely made a dent. All I saw were people working out, chatting, going through their routines, stuff that didn't matter. It was too much. I needed to find a way to narrow it down. That's when Maya came to mind. She always knew how to stay calm under pressure, how to think clearly, and most importantly, she always had my back, whether I realized I needed it or not. I texted her, trying to keep it light, just a simple, "Hey, got a minute to catch up? I need to talk about something." Her reply came fast. She could meet up the next day. When we sat down, I didn't hold back. I laid it all out for her, the messages, the affair, the gym, the footage. Her reaction was exactly what I expected. Stunned silence, disgust, and the genuine sympathy I had always admired in her. She placed her hand over mine as I spoke, her expression full of concern. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice soft. "You don't deserve this. Not ever." I nodded, appreciating her support, but my mind was already shifting to the next step. I showed her the footage, explaining that it was too much for me to handle alone, and asked if she could help me go through it. Without missing a beat, Maya said, "We'll get through this together. I'll help you find what you're looking for." So we settled in side by side, going through hours of footage. We fast-forwarded through people lifting weights, chatting at the front desk, just the normal gym stuff, searching for any sign of them sneaking around. It was boring, repetitive, but Maya didn't complain. She was patient, methodical, and incredibly supportive in ways I hadn't realized I needed. After what felt like forever, we found it. There they were, Alex and my wife, slipping into one of the back rooms. I paused the footage, inhaled deeply, and hit play. I watched them laughing, touching each other, and then doing exactly what I'd feared. They didn't even bother to check if the cameras were on. They were so certain they could get away with it. And there it was, everything, every detail laid out clearly. Their carelessness. Their assumption that I'd never figure it out. The evidence was right there. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of it all sinking in. I had the proof, but now what? How do you even process something like this? Maya poured us both a glass of wine, probably sensing how overwhelmed I was. We sat there in silence for a while, the footage still playing in the background, but I wasn't really seeing it anymore. When it was time to leave, I felt numb. I hugged her goodbye, but it was supposed to be just a friendly hug. Instead, Maya held on a bit longer, her arms around me in a way that wasn't just polite. It felt real, comforting, like she understood everything I was going through without me saying a word. After a moment, I pulled away and thanked her again. I honestly don't know what I'd do without you, I said, and I meant it. She smiled, but there was something in her eyes, something sad. I'll always be here for you, she said quietly. I nodded, then headed home, my thoughts all over the place. I had the proof. I had Maya's support, but I still had to keep up the act a little longer. I had to keep pretending to be the clueless husband. Timing was everything, and when I made my move, it was going to be exactly on my terms. With the footage in hand, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. There was no reason to. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became, not just at her, but at myself. How had I let this go on so long? How had I missed all the signs? I didn't want to confront her in private. No, she deserved to be exposed in front of everyone she thought she could manipulate. So I came up with a plan. I suggested we throw a party for one of our mutual friends. She was all for it. She loved being the center of attention, loved running the show. It was the perfect opportunity. The night of the party arrived, and everything was set. The house was packed with people, laughter echoing through the rooms, drinks flowing freely. And there she was, acting like nothing was wrong, smiling, chatting, as if everything was perfectly fine, completely unaware that I was holding all the evidence in my hands. It took everything I had not to confront her right then and there, but I had a plan, and I wasn't going to deviate from it. Once everyone had settled in, I grabbed the remote and stood in front of the TV. Hey, everyone, I've got something to show you, I said, trying to sound casual. I tried to make it seem like another one of those routine moments, like I was just putting on a funny video or something. But when I hit play, and the footage from the gym started rolling, the room went completely still. At first, confusion spread across their faces. They didn't know what they were seeing. But as the image came into focus, her and Alex sneaking into the back room, the truth hit them all at once. Gasps filled the room. Whispers spread, and I heard the sound of drinks being set down with a soft thud. She stood there, frozen, her face drained of color as she watched herself on screen, caught red-handed. People started speaking up. One friend muttered, "Jesus Christ," while another, who had always been so adamant about morality, sneered, "That's disgusting." Others just went silent, awkwardly avoiding her gaze, clearly uncomfortable. The atmosphere in the room felt like it could explode at any moment, everyone waiting for her to react. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The evidence was right there for everyone to see. And I knew in that moment that none of them would ever look at her the same way again. Her perfect image was shattered, her lies exposed, and our marriage, well, it was finished. Without another word, I walked out. I didn't need to hear her excuses, her apologies, or whatever manipulation she was planning. I wasn't sticking around for that. I just needed air. I needed space to think. So, I walked. No destination in mind, just moving, trying to clear my head, hands stuffed in my pockets, thoughts swirling around everything that had just happened. I felt a mix of anger and something else, a sense of foolishness. How had I let this happen? Why had I ignored the signs? I wasn't some passive victim in this whole mess. I had seen the red flags, but I chose to look the other way. I told myself it would get better. All the while I had been played for a fool. That's when I heard a car pull up beside me. I looked over and saw Maya behind the wheel. She rolled down the window and called out, "Want to go for a ride?" Without hesitation, I nodded and climbed in. We drove in silence for a while. Neither of us said a word, but it wasn't awkward. It was one of those silences that didn't need to be filled. She knew exactly what had happened. She had seen the video. She'd been at the party. There was nothing more to say. Eventually, she drove us to a quiet spot on the edge of town, a hill overlooking the city. The lights below twinkled like stars in the distance, and the air was cool, still. It was peaceful, beautiful, a sharp contrast to the chaos I just walked away from. She got out of the car, opened the trunk, and pulled out a blanket. "I come here sometimes," she said softly, spreading it out across the ground. "It's a good place to clear your head." We sat there, side by side, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could truly talk. We didn't just talk about my marriage, about what went wrong, but about everything. She told me how long she had suspected something wasn't right, how she felt about me, and in that moment, I realized I hadn't felt this comfortable around anyone in years. There was no judgment, no pressure, just her listening and understanding. It was as though I could finally breathe again. At some point, Maya turned to me and wrapped her arms around me, holding me in a long, comforting hug. It wasn't just a friendly gesture. It was deep, genuine. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel burdened. But then I pulled away. There was a sudden awkwardness between us, like I wasn't sure if I should let this moment go further. "I can't," I muttered, barely louder than a whisper. "I'm still married." She looked at me, her gaze soft but firm, as if she knew exactly what I was thinking. "Do you still think it's a marriage?" Her words pierced through the air, so gentle, yet so direct. I didn't have to answer, couldn't really. We both knew the truth unspoken. I nodded slowly, and in that moment, everything shifted. Our lips met, and it was as if a dam had broken. Everything I had been holding back, everything I had been denying, just flooded out. It wasn't planned. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it felt right. Right there, under the quiet sky, with the city lights flickering below, it felt like the world had shifted. We didn't just have sex, we connected. In a way, it wasn't just physical, though that part was unbelievable. It was emotional, something deeper than I had felt in years. Afterward, we drove back to her place. I wasn't ready to go home, not yet. We spent the night together, and it was like a release. It was more than just a physical need being met. It was all the frustration, confusion, and loneliness that had built up in me for so long coming out in waves. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I didn't feel trapped by a marriage that wasn't working anymore. I felt like I was finally letting go. But I knew that nothing could stay this way forever. The morning came, and it was like being slapped with reality. As much as the night with Maya had changed everything, I still had to face the fallout back home. My wife had been exposed. Everything was out in the open now, and I knew she wasn't going to handle it well. There was no way around it. I had to face her. I had to talk about the divorce, about the mess I'd made, about everything that had happened. When I walked in, she was already waiting for me. The tension in the air was suffocating. The moment I stepped through the door, it was like stepping into a pressure cooker. She wasted no time. "You ruined everything," she screamed, her face contorted with rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stood there for a second, letting her words hit me. I wasn't surprised. I had expected this. She wasn't the type to back down. And now that her secret had been exposed, she was fighting back with everything she had. "I didn't ruin anything," I said, my voice even. "You did that all on your own." Of course, the insults came flying after that. She called me an idiot, accused me of humiliating her in front of everyone, and threatened that I'd regret everything I'd done. But I wasn't backing down. I wasn't about to let her turn this around on me. "This is on you," I said again, steady and resolute. And then I said it. "I want a divorce." The words came out flat, almost mechanical, but they hit her like a ton of bricks. For a moment, her expression flickered, like she might actually lose it, but then she took a deep breath. Her anger shifted, turning cold and calculated. "Fine," she said, her voice dripping with venom. You'll get your divorce. You want out? Then get out. That was it. I left the house after that. I needed space. Needed to breathe. It wasn't until later that I realized just how far she was willing to go to make my life hell. One afternoon, while I was out running errands for the business, something happened that I didn't see coming. I was walking back to my car when I spotted one of her colleagues. Another gym guy, not Alex, but the kind of guy who looked like he could bench press a car. He was across the street, standing there, watching me. I could tell he was waiting for something. And the moment I even thought about leaving or turning away, he moved in on me. I didn't stand a chance. Even if I had seen it coming, it wouldn't have mattered. This guy was built like a tank. The first hit caught me off guard, and I went down hard. Everything was a blur after that. Blows rained down. Fists hitting my ribs, my head, my body. I remember the sickening crack of my ribs when his fists connected. The next thing I knew, everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, groggy and disoriented. A nurse was adjusting some of the machines hooked up to me, and across the room, I saw a police officer sitting quietly. As soon as I was coherent enough, he came over and started asking questions. My head was spinning, the details coming back to me slowly. Bits and pieces like a puzzle that didn't quite fit. The guy's face. I told the officer everything I could remember. I spent the next 2 weeks in the hospital, recovering from a concussion and broken ribs. 2 weeks of lying in bed, trying to piece everything together, to understand how it all led here. I knew it had something to do with my wife. There was no other reason a guy like that would come after me. She must have said something. She had to have fed him some story about me stirring up trouble. After 2 weeks, the officer came back, asking if I could identify the guy. Hell yes, I could. I pointed him out in a lineup without a second thought. He looked back at me through the glass with a smug, arrogant look, like he thought he could still intimidate me. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was angry. The guy got sentenced to 3 years, 3 years for attacking me without warning, for trying to take me down for whatever loyalty or lies he had to my wife. I don't know if she was involved in it directly, but at that point I didn't care. The damage had been done. He was the one who paid. As for me, the weeks in the hospital gave me the time I needed, time to think, time to plan, time to figure out how I was going to put an end to this. The divorce process was as messy as anyone could expect, but by then, it was more of a formality. My marriage had ended long before I filed the papers. By the time I stepped into the courtroom, it felt like I was just tying up loose ends, cleaning up the wreckage of a life that no longer felt like mine. My ex-wife, of course, wasn't going to make it easy. She tried dragging things out, throwing out accusations, and stirring up drama in front of the judge. But the truth was, she didn't have a leg to stand on. We didn't have kids, which was a small blessing, and our finances were mostly separate. Thanks to my business being mine alone, she couldn't touch it, and I made damn sure of that. Still, she made plenty of noise. She blamed me for everything, said I embarrassed her, ruined her reputation in front of all our friends. I almost laughed out loud. Her reputation? She was the one who had been sneaking around behind my back with another guy, and somehow I was the villain. The sheer absurdity of it all hit me like a slap. But that's the way people like her operate, right? They twist the narrative to make you feel like you're the one who's lost it, like you're the one who's in the wrong. But I wasn't buying it. I just let her rant. Let her accuse me of being petty, of destroying everything. I knew the truth, and so did everyone who mattered. In the end, the divorce went through. She walked away with nothing but guilt and a shattered life. I walked away with the house, my business, and most importantly, my freedom. And that was more than enough for me. Through all of it, Maya was a constant. We didn't rush into putting labels on what we had. Hell, after everything I'd been through, I wasn't even sure what I wanted. But Maya, she was steady. She didn't try to control or manipulate me. She was just herself, and that was all I needed. We spent more and more time together as the divorce dragged on. It started simple. Dinners at her place, movie nights, late-night conversations about the mess my life had become. But as time passed, something deeper started to grow between us. I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't with anyone in years. She never pushed me to talk. She just listened. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like someone genuinely cared about me. Not for what I could give them, but because they wanted to care. By the time the divorce was finalized, I realized that Maya wasn't just someone to lean on during a tough time. She was someone I could see a future with. She had stood by me when everything had fallen apart, and she hadn't asked for a damn thing in return. We didn't rush into anything, though. After everything that had happened, I took it slow. I wasn't looking to force anything. I just appreciated the peace, the clarity, and the quiet support she brought into my life. As for my friends, I can't even begin to express how much they meant to me during this time. When I was lying in that hospital bed, recovering from the beating, they showed up. Even the ones I hadn't seen in months came to visit. They cracked jokes, brought in takeout, anything to make the hell that was hospital food a little more bearable. They kept me grounded, made me laugh. They were there for me, even when I felt like I was losing my mind. One of my closest friends told me, "We all thought she was bad news, man. We just didn't know how to say it." First, that hit me hard. Why didn't anyone speak up sooner? But then I realized it wouldn't have mattered. I was too far gone, too blinded by the idea of who I thought my wife was. I wouldn't have listened, but they were still there for me. No judgment. No, I told you so. Just support. And after everything that had happened, that kind of loyalty meant more to me than anything else. Lying in that hospital bed, surrounded by my friends with Maya by my side, I finally realized how lucky I was. Sure, I'd been through hell, but I came out of it with something more valuable than anything money could buy. People who genuinely cared. People who had my back, no strings attached. It wasn't about money, status, or success. It was about real, authentic connections, something no amount of material things could replace. The divorce dragged on for months, but when it was finally over, I walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter than I had in years. It was done. That chapter was closed. I was free to move on, to rebuild, to start fresh. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone drag me back down. Looking back, I know I made my mistakes. I ignored the red flags. I trusted the wrong person. But that's life, isn't it? You live, you learn. And if you're lucky, you come out of it stronger. To anyone reading this, thank you. Honestly, sharing this story, writing it all down, has helped me process everything in ways I didn't expect. If even one person reads this and learns from what I went through, then it's all been worth it. Take care of yourselves. Pay attention to the people around you. Don't let anyone treat you like you're less than you deserve. And above all, trust your instincts. They're there for a reason. Good luck.